So good morning everyone, welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. Thoughts are like waves that come and go. The first silence, more innocent silence, is to hold on to the waves, offering it resistance. And then letting them go back to their normal state. Real silence starts when you give up all the time of these thoughts. As attention goes after the thought, it's brought back to stillness, silence. There's the attitude of, it's not important, it doesn't matter. Shh, shh. Constantly the attitude of shush. When delusion, phenomenons, hold no power over your attention, that is silence. Silence equals stillness and is a potent, enormous fire that burns illusion away. So good morning once again. Welcome to Satsang. Just letting you know that we use WhatsApp as a means of communication. The number appears on the comments. You can send your questions directly to me or through Instagram. So one of the things which is more difficult to achieve, and it's achieved step by step, is seriousness. Everybody more or less thinks they're serious. And as you conquer more focus through hard working, you will see that what you called seriousness before was very far from being serious. And more or less, you're discovering this many times. Because mind plays a lot of games. And it is important so that you have more clarity. It is important to visualize. Either you're giving your time to liberation or to the maintenance of illusion. Not both at the same time. This is a mistake. It doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. They are opposite in nature. So today there's many ideas about doing both at the same time. But let me tell you one thing, that probably it will only be clear just many years from now. You are deluding yourself. And as life still promises a lot of time ahead, it's difficult to grasp this because physically, emotionally, mentally, it seems that we still have a lot of time. But that's the thing. You have a lot of time because you need it. That's why you have a lot of time. Because you need it. To go around all the mechanics of your mind, to clean it up, to be able to remove yourself from the cycles of distraction, delusion, to conquer freedom from your beliefs, you'll need time. As long as you can get. But if you're not using it, if you're using it to enjoy life, well, what to do? But in the end, it's on you. So I'll read a question here. I will answer your question now. So there was someone asking where I'm from. I will answer, I'm in Brazil now, but that doesn't mean anything. But for those who are from India, in 3 or 4 days, you should, if you're interested, check the YouTube channel, because in 3 or 4 days, there's the video is posted, even here in the group of the Satsang. So if you want to send your WhatsApp number, I can put you here. And then I put back the video with subtitles in many languages. Hindi, one of them, of course, and Telugu and Malayalam, many different. And well, they are not perfect, but they will help to understand for those who have more difficulty, or with those who want to share with those who don't speak English. Okay, coming back. I will answer your question now. I think that my mind don't want to believe in reincarnation because it wants to continue to waste time. How to overcome that? To be more precise, one part believes in it because I trust all the masters who have said so, and another research that I have been doing on it. The other part doesn't want to believe it because it doesn't have the experience of it. And because if it believes, then it comes with a responsibility. And if I don't do my best, I suffer from guilt. Well, so this is what I was talking about. It was kind of an introduction. First of all, the quest for truth makes sense. Makes sense. Well, of course, that's an individual thing, but from the outer perspective, from the one who's observing, seekers, it makes sense. It has a future if there's the calling. And the calling, it is something that has nothing to do, or may not have anything to do, with spiritual luggage. Sometimes people are a part of spiritual means, spiritual environments. Other times, they don't. They are actually in the opposite sphere, but something comes, takes their peace and quiet away, whatever that means, and doesn't let them have any contentment in what they're doing. There's a restlessness, intense one, that comes, and they have to do something. And they start their journey like this, looking for it. This is the calling. So the calling is there first. Despite your level of knowledge of spirituality, there's the calling there, which is pulling you. And this is the most important, this is the fundamental part. Without it, well, you have nothing. It's just a curiosity. And when there's the calling, depending on how strong it is and how you take it, this battle begins. A battle of the character that wants to live his life, that wants to follow his interests, his beliefs, and all of this, normal life, versus the spiritual calling that pulls in an opposite direction. So first, there's the attempt to fight this calling, because it is disturbing all beliefs that you have, is disturbing your life. Then If it's not possible, and if the calling is there, of course it's not possible. Then there's this bargaining, adapting the calling towards individual needs, towards the dreams of the character, and imagining in some sense that the end journey of this calling, where it is calling you to, will be the answer to your highest worldly desires, dreams, beliefs. And as this happens, it's like what comes first is greed. So acquiring happiness from the worldly point of view is greed, is the expression of greed. The motivation is greed, is having more. From the point of view of the calling, it is liberation from this character, its greeds, desires, and that is real happiness. But it cannot be envisioned by the character, and he has to envision something. So this is where he starts from. And of course, just describing general terms, because each one has its own nuances. But it goes more or less like this. So eventually, the more room you leave for the calling, the more space you give it, the stronger it becomes. And the faster it goes. The less room you give it, the more you entertain it, the more you use its fuel to pursue your worldly goals, the longer it takes. And it is even possible to lose the calling, because the calling is something sacred. And if you disrespect sacredness, you can lose it. And it takes a long time to get it back. It may take, depends, and every case is different. But I've seen this happen many times. And sometimes it doesn't take too long to get it back, depending on your intensity. Other times it can really take very long. Or even the calling is there, but you cannot find strength, you cannot find a path from yourself to follow that calling, because you're too weak, dependent from all these worldly desires. And that is a very sad life, filled with regret and sadness. It's like more or less a drug addict. He knows that's wrong. He knows that he is destroying himself. His life is going to the ground, but he can't do anything about it. He could have done previously, when it was possible, when the calling was there, because when it starts, really, if it starts, it's because you can. But if you waste it, then everything comes with a price. So eventually, mind plays a lot of games. A lot of games. And like I said in the beginning, it's difficult to find seriousness. And let me go to the question again. So how to overcome it? This cannot be taught. No one can teach you to overcome it. The path of liberation is through sacrifice. And this has different meanings. But eventually, to embrace the spiritual calling, you will have to sacrifice the character's desires, needs, dreams, etc., future. There's no other way. So, if the calling is there, if liberation is really what you want, but I mean really, then eventually you will have to be honest with yourself. Nobody can teach you that. As long as you are waiting for someone to teach you that, you're postponing. Just postponing. What for? Procrastinating. Why? To gain more time. To enjoy a little bit more of illusion. This is what you're doing. But at the same time, you're disrespecting your spiritual call. And that comes with a price. Nobody can teach you that, how to overcome that. You have the calling, but that's not all. Someone said once that many are called, few are chosen. Few make the right choice. And the right choice rationally is clear, crystal clear. Illusion, bondage, eventual suffering, if not constant suffering, towards liberation, supreme happiness, wholeness. Intellectually, there's no choice here. Choice is clear. But in practical terms, it doesn't work like that. And if you're not honest with yourself, every day, at every moment, that liberation is what you want, and you give up all other investments, doesn't matter. And look, in this situation, the example that you are giving here, I'm speaking for everybody, but with your example, speaking to you. The mind hasn't seen it, so it doesn't believe it. But what is this part of the mind, if not the character? And liberation is liberation from this character. So if the character would have seen it, how would there be liberation? Because the character has crossed over. It doesn't work like that. Well, a few glimpses here and there is possible, but not much more than that. Not much more than that. And that part of you that wants that confirmation to be able to proceed, that is greed. That is greed, that yes, I will apply fully if I have the guarantee that it pays at the end of the day, that it exists, that it is real. What does this mean? Is real. Is real according to what I know. And what this character knows is illusion is real. And from here I can take some forms of pleasure. I can exercise control. I can do blah, 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 blah. And this is what he wants to keep. And he will go to the other side if it has a proof. Or he invests in both. But investing in both is investing in only one. And that is illusion. Because you have turned this calling, if it is there, you have transformed this quest for liberation as another worldly desire. And in the sphere of worldly desires, you are investing in many of them because, well, it is chopped pieces of happiness in the midst of bitter suffering. So you're chopping a little bit and trying to put the pieces together to make it a bigger happiness. So, and this is why we invest in so many fronts. And spiritual liberation becomes just another front like this. Even if you don't see it, even if you're saying, oh, but I'm doing this just to maintain myself and so that I can dedicate more time to liberation, blah, 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 blah. You're keeping that to maintain it, to continue to reap the fruits. And you're in the direction of gains, 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 profit, profit. And this is greed. In the beginning, greed can take you a little bit. It can, because it can help you to start intense practices. It can help you to transcend, even if it is just by greed. And by reason. Well, I have something here that I know what it is. Eventually it brings me suffering. And I have this that others, enlightened soul says that this is liberation. Okay, so by reason, I can apply here. And the calling, don't forget the calling. It has to be there. Then in this beginning stages, you can advance by greed, but eventually, through your spiritual works, through your meditation, intense one, some purification has to happen. If it doesn't, you cannot move ahead. If it does, greed will reduce, and a new vision becomes more possible. This has to happen, because greed can only take you so far. And eventually, as things become serious, we will start experiencing many losses. Many worldly losses. And if it is serious, it's going to be very difficult to replace them. In the sense that people make this, okay, so I leave everything behind, or I leave this because I want to gain that. So theoretically this works a little bit, but then it's like I'm leaving this, not gaining anything from there. And I have to leave more, not gaining anything from there. And still, the path asks me to leave even more, and I'm not giving anything there. Either greed falls, or you cannot abandon anything else. So it takes you to a certain point, but then it will take you no further. So it's a decision that eventually those who are serious have to make, and a decision that needs to be maintained over and over again. Every moment, as you are there observing, cutting all, the outer steps are always more easy, and for the majority, they are the difficult ones, they imagine. What I say about abandoning the world, leaving all things behind, dedicating completely to your spiritual quest, finding your master, this and that. This is the easiest part. And for the majority, it's probably the most difficult, because they haven't overcome this. Some are even deluded that this is not even needed, because, well, they have adapted their spiritual calling to the worldly needs, and they are enjoying life, whatever that means. No, it's okay. It's your calling, it's your wins, it's your losses. So you decide. But doing actually these first steps, it's the easy part. And I see this many times. Then what happens is you've moved from your life to a new life, for example, that you are there to focus, surrender, and deepen your spiritual work. And you will find yourself trying to bring back all worldly investments transferred to those new circumstances, and trying to do the same that you were doing previously. So this is what I mean. It's more, this part is essential. But then the inner part, where you really look at from where you have come, what you have come to do, and what you're really doing. And you will have to come to your senses that I'm here for liberation only. And I will have to start cutting everything else. It is part of the work. Not entertaining anything else. And you need to conquer this day by day, moment by moment, because it is constant. The need to distract, to move in a different direction is at all times it is there. At all times it is there. So either the calling is there and you respect it fully, because many times these first stages, first changes and all, it's like, oh, I've done my homework, I've done what I had to do, now it's fine. That was just a means, creation of circumstances that will allow the deeper stages to unfold. And without them, there's still nothing. So eventually, you're waiting for something to convince you or something like that. This is being naive. It's your interest. If you don't, you don't, and that's your loss. And I won't even elaborate much on this. If you do, well, there's no guarantees of success. But for the one who has the calling is there. There's no peace without following through. So, in this situation that you're asking the question, either the calling is there and greed is moving ahead, trying to control, to negotiate, to bargain. And this is disrespect towards the calling. Or there's just greed and there's no calling. If there's the calling, don't disrespect it, because, well, that has a bitter price. Because those who are ripe for liberation are those who come with the call. The call is there, this calling, look, it's time. Leave everything else. This is your direction now. The direction for the supreme accomplishment, supreme realization. If you're turning your back to that, so what are you embracing apart from misery and suffering? It's clear. Okay, you may have comfort, you may have sense pleasures, you may have a lot of things, but you're turning your back to your heart. So what are you really embracing? What will be the fruits in the end? Doesn't need a genius to figure that one out. So either the calling is there and you trust it and you respect it and you surrender to it, let him guide your life, and make it count on details, because it is on details that it's important. Or the calling is not there, and no point, well, do whatever you want, because, well, spirituality for you is not as different as anything else. It just appears to be. And eventually, you have to come to this point if you want to progress. It's like, I've done so much, I've reached so far, and I'm wasting time with all these little things. Because it becomes clear how pointless it is. And then you have to correct it at every detail. course you don't know. Of course you have no guarantees. But if the calling is there, where does it come from? And for those who have the calling, they don't have a choice. They may pretend to have a choice, but they don't have a choice. And the stronger the calling, the less the choice. But that calling can disappear. So having the calling and being bargaining with it, it's still a good part because you know it is there. It gives you kind of a security. But when it disappears, it leaves such a big hole inside of you that nothing can fill it. I used to have a good spiritual practice and focused, but in the last 2 years I feel unfocused and fall into dependency on sensual pleasures, please, such as food and sex. Any advice how to connect again? Well, first we have to understand what happens. And it happens because of what I've explained in the beginning. And this is putting things in perspective. So many fronts of investment for happiness. One being spiritual practice for liberation, but keeping the other ones. And as I intensify these spiritual practices, it starts pulling me in one direction. But if I haven't made those decisions, if I haven't cut the rest, eventually it will make an effect like, how do you call it? An elastic. Something that you pull in one direction, it reaches the apex, you let go and it goes back to where it was, or even more. So if you're still grounded in that vibration and you're trying to, through greed, trying to intensify your spiritual practices, you can go so far eventually that the rest, that which is still tamasic in nature, will pull you back again strongly, and you will fall down from where you were. So it's like they say, trying to cross the river with one foot in each canoe, eventually you will fall in the water. And this is about stability of your delusion. So first, be clear of which direction you want to proceed and cut everything else. Because it's like any other addiction. So you drink, you smoke, you take drugs, whatever. There are few that can cut the addiction while they are in front of their source of addiction. For the majority, they have to create distance from it. But in terms of liberation, it has to be a cut. Because, okay, so I'll leave this for a while. You'll go back to it eventually, of course. Because, well, first, the more superficial sanskars rise up to be clean, rise up to be clean. Then, the more deeper ones arise, and it's more difficult to contain, to not indulging. And eventually, you succumb because you're still trapped. You're just maintaining a distance for a certain period of time. You haven't cut it in your mind. You haven't made the decision. So, monks, for example, that do vows, what are these vows for? They are there to help them. And of course, you don't need to make vows unless you need. Each one has its own path. But as a seeker of truth, inside of you, you must be living the same life, the same monastic type of life, in the sense of detachment and where you're focusing your attention and energy. So your sources of pleasure, they are your sources of torment, distraction. And the one who really wants to focus, as he tries to do so, he will see. You will see. So in your case, either the calling is not there or you're disrespecting it. You haven't committed fully, you haven't surrendered yourself to that path, because without that, the rest cannot come. And it's a completely different journey. It's like you want to bake a cake. You have mixed all the ingredients, all is there, but you don't want to put it in the oven because the oven is too hot. So it will just go rotten. It's more or less the same. So these first circumstances, decisions, this is about circumstances, the right circumstance. Then things begin. Things begin. And you have to continue and maintain it. And there's no balance. For example, this description is a case of balance, for example. You're trying to balance your spiritual practices with your worldly investments. There's no such thing. It is a war. Some of the biggest spiritual scriptures, they are depicted as wars. They are explained through a context of war, because it is a war. And if you're not seeing it this way, you will lose. Because only you can lose, only you can win. And you will lose. It is a war. As you sit for meditation, 2 hours, 3 hours, more, you're taking time from this character, even if it has this vision, oh, meditation will help me to have a better mind, to get my desires easier, to be happy, but with circumstance, with worldly meanings. Even if you have these ideas, intense meditation will start burning them, will start transforming them. It is threatening the worldly existence. Unworldly existence is threatening, opposing the spiritual path. They are in a war. So if you try to meditate intensely and to keep on intensifying, because meditation is like this, it's not static. You need to increase longer and longer sittings, longer and longer sittings. No balance. You have to increase it. And as you increase one, you decrease the other one. And when you're trying to increase your meditation, you will see that everything will come to disturb. To stop that practice in that moment. And you may see that because things are coming to disturb, and at the same time, there's something that says, okay, I'll do this another time, or they are not letting me meditate, and blah, 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 blah. Eventually, you may go through these first stages, then if you are living with others. Even if not, clashes with others will start. Sometimes it seems that there's a reason for that. Other times it seems that there's no reason. But the reason is there because it is a war. And as you are trying to give more time to meditation, silence, you are fighting worldliness. And worldliness, your illusion, will defend itself. And you can see this more clearly when you're really on the side of the quest for truth. As you are still on the side of the quest for illusion, and this takes time to make the transition, it will be more difficult because it will be your wills, not something that is imposing. But when you're more established in your quest for truth, you will see these impositions. And these fightings will come. And as you try to negotiate, to maintain peace, I'll take it more slowly so that I don't compromise the rest and this and that, you'll lose it. And eventually, you're starving, you need urgent pleasure, and you have to go back to your old sources of pleasure. So, an addict needs to be completely purged of his addictions long enough. Long enough. Or else he returns to them in a stronger way even, to compensate all that has been lost. And it's very, very easy to fall into that situation. Unless you have made the decisions and those decisions have matured enough. And that means you have pursued, you have continued, you have persisted, no matter what your mind is screaming, what others are saying, you have persisted. There's no turning back when you have walked enough into one direction only. Then, when you have walked enough, there's nothing to go back to, nothing to return to. But this is, to grasp this meaning, a lot of work is needed. So it is called sacrifice, because you may have many ideas of what you'll gain, but you don't know. And eventually, when it becomes serious, you will lose and lose and lose and lose what you thought you had. And no gains. And this is to purge the wrong motivations out of you. And if you're a seeker of truth, if the calling is there, you will eventually subside and continue, no matter what. And the more helpless you'll become, the more surrendered you will, the highest the level of surrendering you'll achieve. And God communion. But without these first stages, if you keep just pursuing many things at the same time, worldly desires and spiritual ones, everything is just worldly. Even your spiritual desires are worldly. And you have time to prepare, but when it starts. There's no turning back, and either you're ready or you fall down. And then if you fall down, well, if that is your calling, then you will take radical measures to make you more ready. And that probably will mean a lot of time of emptiness, of not being able to go back to the path of liberation, not feeling the life of the process, so that next time when it comes, you don't disrespect it. Okay. So if there's no other questions, let's see here. So no more questions. So that's all for today. Despite the level that you're working, decisions have to be made and then maintained at all costs. The more serious you are, the more possible to amplify this meaning of at all costs. And the more you are willing to sacrifice, more will be asked, until there's nothing else to retain you, to hold you, to distract you. This is blessing. There's no loss anywhere, just blessing. And like I've explained in the last satsang, if the calling is there, if you're a seeker of truth, you have lived many, many lives. You have done this, all these worldly investments, you have done it again and 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 again. Nothing new under the sun. Now you have all the time to dedicate to your process of liberation. Okay, how often do you broadcast and when, please? Usually it is Wednesdays and Saturdays, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time. And like I've explained previously, in YouTube, we cannot do this here in Instagram, but in YouTube, you will find, after 3 or 4 days, you will find this video with subtitles. Portuguese, English, German, Hindi, Malayalam, Telugu. There's another Hindi dialect, but I don't remember. There's Russian even. There's a lot of things. Well, they may not be the best subtitles, but it will help to understand for those like myself that doesn't hold English as their mother tongue. And again, if there's a need, there's always a possibility to have a private satsang through here, through Skype or WhatsApp or something like that. But just reminding that it is for serious purposes, and I don't deal with worldly subjects. Okay. So next satsang, Tamil. Yes, Tamil. Tamil also. So next satsang will be Saturday, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. And another thing that I remember now, I have spoken some time ago that I would make available here in the ashram meditation retreats, 10 days, 10 hours a day meditation. It will be with Kriya. And It will start on May, the beginning of May. It will start. The website is being almost completed. It's a website directed only to that. And well, when it starts, you can participate. It is on donation basis, so there's no any barriers whatsoever in terms of your possibilities. If you don't have anything, you don't need to give anything. Just it is available for those who want to work seriously. So if you're into liberation, you can take part in it and enjoy as much as you can. If you're into, well, reducing stress and all these other blah blah blahs, then please don't come. It is available for serious seekers. So May it starts, beginning of May. Okay, so see you on Saturday.